verse 28 at the end there has a third principle. And the third principle is to present every man perfect in Christ. And I would call that the target of discipleship. We've seen the tip-top of discipleship, the tool, that is, that we're warning and teaching, and then the target of discipleship is that we present every man perfect in Christ. The word perfect here it means complete. It means full grown. It means to be mature. It's having come to the place where you're fully trained and prepared to function. Now, let's look at the text here, because Paul writes verses 24 through 29 as an expanded explanation of his ministry. If you notice at the end of verse 23, he begins this theme of his ministry. Okay? And so in verses 24 through 27, he's describing his ministry as one marked by suffering. He explains his ministry as a stewardship to proclaim the mystery of the gospel to everyone. And so by the time he gets to the last part of verse 28, that portion serves as a culminating purpose statement, if you will. And so we come to Paul and we ask Paul, why did you do all that suffering and serving? What was that about? What was the purpose of that? And Paul responds based on this text: the purpose of my proclaiming Christ through warning and teaching, as well as the purpose of my labor in verse 29, was so that I could present every member of the church as mature in the Lord. I want every member to be fully grown in Christ. Not babes in Christ. Not milk eaters in Christ, right? Not bench pew members in Christ. No, but I want every member to be mature.
Yes, sir.
And brothers and sisters, we have to see that's the target that we're shooting for when we make disciples. My brothers and sisters, people fully trained and able to function like Jesus, that's what we're looking for. If you look ahead to chapter 2 and verse 2 and read that, we see that Paul wants their hearts to attain to all the riches of the full assurance of understanding of the knowledge of the mystery of God. Yeah. In other words, he wants them to know who God is and why he works the way he works. Y'all, that sounds like maturity to me. In Romans 8:29, we know that he wants us to be conformed to the image of Christ. Talking about, and that's his plan for us from the very beginning. It says we were predestined for that in Romans 28. Romans 8:29. And that is, he wants us to have Christ, be like Christ in character, in attribute, in personality. Listen, when God called me to preach, I was in the first year of a 3-year stint as a manager trainee for Volume Shoe Corporation. My training was supposed to be 3 months and then I was going to get a store, but it ended up being 3 years. Wonder what that says. But during those 3 years, I learned just about everything related to running a store. I learned about upset customers. I learned about moms buying shoes for their first child. I learned about surprise store inspections and inventory shortages and late shipments. I learned how to handle a store robbery. I learned about great employees. I learned about lazy ones. I learned about how to handle a register malfunction, how to handle the Easter rush and the back-to-school rush. By the time I got my own store, I was fully trained. I was mature. I had seen it all. And y'all, that's the idea of this text. But we have to ask an important question. We understand the target is a mature disciple. What is a mature disciple? How do we know if we've made one? Well, Mr. Jim Putman, author of Real Life Discipleship, provides some answers. And I don't think this is necessarily an exhaustive answer, but think about these. These are real qualities that a mature Christian has. And I would ask you to think about, where are you in relationship to these qualities? First, a mature believer, he says, a mature disciple, speaks the truth in love. Doesn't fly off the handle. Not short-tempered. A mature disciple is others-centered. Really considers what's best for the other person. Mature disciple forgives and does not take offense. That's Colossians 3:13. A mature disciple, John 15:4, is able to feed themselves. And then a mature disciple is able to reproduce themselves. We saw that in 2 Timothy 2:2. Finally, he says, a mature disciple is humble and submits to authority. Aren't those good qualities? Listen, that's what we're shooting for. Christians who live their lives like that. Now, there's a tendency here as well that we need to watch out for. And that is, we need to be careful not to see discipleship, or when we fail to see discipleship is a process, to think about it as something that's more momentary or short-term. Just as newborn babes do not mature in a few months or even a few years, neither does a newborn babe in Christ. We need time to mature. Making a mature disciple involves investing in younger believers, walking through life with them, and shepherding them to Christian maturity.